Well, hi there. Good evening. Welcome to the broadcast. Thank you for your wonderful company. You're watching EBN Prime Edition, our special coverage of the budget 2024-2025 continues. It is budget day still, and quite a lot of things have been picked up from that budget reading by Cabinet Secretary for National Treasury, Professor Njuguna Ndung'u. We'll be having a conversation around that with my guests in studio. I'll be joined by National Secretary for the Economist Society of Kenya, John Mungai, as well as Bernard Ochieng, who's a business developer, as well as a financial consultant. What was in the budget that needs more talking about, even as we do wait upon the submission of the report of the Finance Committee to the National Assembly come next week, Tuesday, 2024. So this and much more we've got covered, lined up for you tonight. Your feedback is highly welcomed across our social media platforms. That is on EBN TV. Our SMS line is 23059. We are live across all our streaming platforms. But before we get into this conversation, let's take a look at stories making headlines tonight. Cabinet Secretary for Treasury, Professor Njuguna Ndung'u, reads the 3.9 trillion shillings 2024-2025 budget in Parliament, says this will stimulate the economy. Just what is in the budget? Government proposes tax on digital advertising, alcohol, nicotine substances, edible oils, and much more. And tonight, on our post-analysis of the budget 2024-2025, we speak to John Mungai, the National Secretary of the Economist Society of Kenya, and Bernard Ochieng, a business development professional, to get more insights on the budget. Well, my name is Cynthia Najala. Let's get started. But before we get into matters budget, let me quickly update you about the Makadara shooting, where a senior police officer shot and seriously injured Makadara Principal Magistrate Monica Kivuti during active court session at the Makadara Law Courts. The unfortunate incident happened after the officer's wife was sentenced to life imprisonment in a fraud case. The suspect, identified as Chief Inspector Samson Kipruto, who commands a station in Londiani, Kericho County, had traveled to Nairobi to attend the case. He was fatally shot by police officers present at the scene. The magistrate was rushed to hospital for specialized medical care. The judiciary, in response, condemned the incident and urged all court users to remain calm as law enforcement officers conduct further investigations. They also assured all judicial officers, staff, and court users of their safety and security in all premises.
Our officers who are within the courts were able to act swiftly, and we managed to neutralize the situation. And now we can say that our magistrates and the officers are stable. We thank God for that. And the situation is under control. As at now, our officers from homicide unit have taken over. They are yet to establish the background information of the suspect and all other details that is of this incident this afternoon. And therefore, that is a precise and brief information I can give, and to assure any other person that the situation is under control and nothing is alarming. Our officers have taken charge.
Well, that is a story that continues to develop. We've got our eyes and ears on the ground concerning that issue, but the latest statement as well by the judiciary is that all activities at the Makadara courts have been suspended until June 17th, so we'll be keeping tabs with that. Now, let's get back to our headline story that concerns the budget of 2024-2025. Now, the Cabinet Secretary for Treasury, Professor Njuguna Ndung'u, says government has listened to the views of Kenyans and the opinions will be considered in the adoption of the budget 2024-2025 ahead of the tabling of the report next week in Parliament. The Cabinet Secretary, while admitting economic challenges, said the cost of living has been at the center of talk, as well as the level of unemployment, effects of floods, and taxation concerns.
In this year's budget process, we accorded Kenyans an opportunity to share their views on how to address the economic challenges facing the country. Kenyans responded to our call and requested the government to address, through this budget, first, the devastating effects of the ongoing floods; second, taxation concerns and cost of living; third, the level of unemployment; fourth, protection of the poor and the vulnerable; fifth, reduction of wastage in public expenditures at the national and county governments level. Today, Mr. Speaker, I wish to assure Kenyans that we have listened to their concerns, and we have spelled out measures to address through this budget. In this regard, the budget highlights, and even the government's plan to strengthen the resilience of our economy to navigate the global turbulence, accelerate economic transformation, and decisively address the overarching developmental challenges in line with better bottom-up economic transformation agenda. It is in this context we have chosen the theme of this year's budget as sustaining the bottom-up economic transformation agenda, fiscal consolidation, and investing in climate change mitigation and adaptation for improved livelihoods.
Now, the government has implemented austerity measures for the financial year 2024-2025 to achieve budget balance and enhance efficiency. According to the Treasury Cabinet Secretary Njuguna Ndung'u, he said measures including a 30% reduction in transfers to state agencies, cutting across all ministries, departments and agencies have been proposed. Significant spending cuts on foreign travel, training expenses restricted to government institutions, and suspension of purchases of motor vehicles and furniture for 1 year have also been proposed. In addition, a 1-year suspension on all new recruitments in the public sector to control the expenditure and address issues like ghost workers.
Spending on the following expenditure items: foreign travels, rationalization of all training expenses across government and restricting all training to within government institutions, rationalizing all allocations for purchases of motor vehicles and suspending purchases of furniture for a period of 1 year, and suspending all refurbishment and partitioning of government offices. Third, the expenditure control measures that include suspension of all new recruitment in the public sector for 1 year, for the next 1 year, audit and cleanse all public payrolls, pension and transfers to the vulnerable, with a view to eliminate ghost workers as well as enforce payments of salary scales and that are approved as recommended by SRC, and consolidation of public procurement for common user items. Fourth, minimizing government expenditure but by leveraging on technology, and this will entail use of Wi-Fi emails for efficient communication. 5, reviewing the insurance schemes, especially looking at Edu, Afia, indigence, public service, police and prison commissions and independent offices under the universal health coverage.
Now, the government is proposing an additional allocation of 5 billion shillings to the Hustler Fund to improve accessibility and affordability of credit for Kenyans at the bottom of the economic pyramid. This allocation aims to scale up access to credit for households and micro, small and medium enterprises, MSMEs. An additional 200 million shillings is proposed for the Youth Enterprise Development Fund. 62.5 million shillings is allocated for the Center for Entrepreneurship project.
Mr. Speaker, accessibility and affordable credit to most Kenyans at the bottom of the pyramid remains a challenge. To address this challenge, the government is proposing an additional allocation of 5 billion shillings to the Financial Inclusion or Hustlers Fund to scale up access to credit for households and MSMEs. I also propose an additional 200 million for the Youth Enterprise Development Fund, Kenya shillings 162.5 million for the Center for Entrepreneurship project, and Kenya shillings 1.9 billion for Rural Kenya Financial Inclusion Facility. Third, let me turn to housing and settlement, Mr. Speaker.
Now this is interesting. As the Cabinet Secretary for National Treasury, Professor Njuguna Ndung'u, and his entourage prepared to address Kenyans on the budget for 2024-2025 financial year, there was a brief moment of interruption outside the Treasury building as a man lurched at the CS, interrupting the budget ceremony before security forces could intervene. The man, captured live on TV, could be heard shouting at the CS before being whisked away under heavy security. The action displayed arguably what a lot of ordinary Kenyans are bottling on the inside regarding a section of the tax proposals. Earlier this week, a section of activists took to the streets rejecting the Finance Bill 2024 while urging members of Parliament to do the same.
We will not go. We will not surrender.
A section of Azimio members of Parliament and UDA's Gathoni wa Mushomba have threatened to shoot down the Finance Bill 2024 if the Finance Committee fails to incorporate the views of Kenyans and experts on contentious clauses. However, Kenya Kwanza members of Parliament have criticized this stance as doublespeak, arguing that these MPs want development without supporting measures to raise revenue. They challenged these members of public to publicly declare their willingness to forfeit development budgets for projects in their constituencies.
We are being ambitious. Let us let the government look at fiscal consolidation. Let's live within our means. I think that's why we need to start. Because globally, even the global economy is not improving.
Mimi nitapeleka amendments zangu bunge, niko na amendments kama 13. Zisipokubalika katika bunge, mimi nitavote no.
Parliament here will be bought, will be given money by the president, but we will stand our ground. We will fight for Kenyans because that is the right thing that we should be doing. So whether they shoot it down or not, we will stand and be counted as the few. I will stand and be counted as one of the few members of Parliament who stood with Kenya.
I would say I've gone through public participation with the people of Dagoretti North. Their word is just one. That if they do not change, yes, we have to say no. I will be saying, oh, we can shoot it, no. But those who will say no, will say no. For the purposes of, for us, history to come and judge us after.
Those who want to say that their constituents who elected them do not want any development, they should stand up in Parliament and boldly proclaim it. This masquerading that I want development and the development comes at a cost, but I do not care where the money comes from, is a luxury that the parliamentarians do not enjoy.
Where he stands, we must have a finance bill. Anyway, it has to be there.
Advise us on how to advise him. It doesn't take any advice. So therefore, we members of Parliament who are with the people, we will always fight for the people. We will always be on the side of the people, by the people.
All right, so we took to the streets just to take some of the views and opinions from Kenyans after the bill was read in Parliament. Let's listen into what they had to say.
Financial bill ukipitishwa, sisi kama wazazi tunafundisha watoto. Sisi kama wanajua kali tunafanyia customer hapa. Wakati hii bill itapita, ile spare hata watu wetu wale tunawafanyia kazi ikipitishwa hii maneno, tutakuwa na kazi ngumu ya kufanya kazi. Mtu atachukua gari yake yake kwa mlango, mimi nikitoka nikuje kazi, hakuna mali tutapata kazi. Ule mama akikuja hapa kupika chakula, akiingia hapa Naivas iko hapa, hawezi nunua hata unga. Sasa tunaomba tafadhali mbunge wetu, Mheshimiwa George Aladwa, kama tulikuchagua ukweli na roho yetu moja, tukakuweka ukuwe mbunge wetu wa Embakasi constituency, Makadara constituency. Tafadhali ikiingia bunge hii mswada tutete na uikatae kabisa. Na ukatae maswada upitishe, usirudi hapa tumepewa hongo.
Hii finance bill itatumiza sana. Hata unga kwamba unga inatumiza sana. Sasa tunapiga hesabu kwanza, magari itatukatia bei mingi sana. Sasa tunaomba Mheshimiwa Ruto atukati kidogo financial bill, asiweke sana mingi, umesikia? Asipitishwe sana, lakini naomba Ruto, hii serikali kama ni mzuri sana, hiyo financial bill iwekwe juu sana. Gari, mimi niko na gari, si ndio? Sikia kwanza, wale kwa wameka hiyo kura, Mungu wasaidie, lakini nataka gari ya mtu ikatwe 2.4% divided by 400,000. Iwekwe sana, ili watu wajue kwanza. Ukiambia weka huyu jamaa, kuna makosa hapo. Mtu akilia waambie utafanya nini? Mimi naomba Mheshimiwa Ruto akaze kabisa. Ndio maisha, watu ndio maisha, ukiambia ni aje, hii wembe ni mbao siku hizi amesinu kweli. Mimi naomba Mheshimiwa Ruto, juu umejua yeye na mimi kitu moja.
All right, now the budget is all about numbers. So let's take a look at some of the key numbers concerning this particular budget that you need to take a mental note of. We'll begin with the total budget, which is at 3.9 trillion shillings. If you round that off, it gets to 4 trillion. And that is a figure that you've seen in a lot of media outlets, 4 trillion shillings, but it is at 3.9 trillion shillings. This is the highest number that the Republic of Kenya has ever recorded as the total budget. In 2023-2024 financial year, the estimates was at 3.6 trillion shillings. So this is a jump high, and perhaps this is the trajectory if you compare the previous budgets for the previous financial year. So we'll also try to understand why this number keeps on rising, but it's not really reflecting within the country's economy and your pockets, because you know the argument is they're still empty. Now the budget deficit is at 606 billion shillings. That is the budget deficit. That means this money has to be found somehow to finance this particular gap that is there. How do we do that? Through borrowing, both domestically and foreign borrowing. Now it is expected that within this financial year of 2024-2025, external borrowing will be at 55%. That equates to about 333 billion shillings. Now local borrowing, or what we call domestic borrowing, is at 44%, which is estimated to be at 263.2 billion shillings. So Kenya is stuck on a cycle of budget deficits and borrowing and repaying those particular loans. So we'll also understand as well as how do we bring this particular deficit down. As it stands, the National Treasury says the country's debt status is at 11.4 trillion shillings. That's even much more than what the total budget looks like. So we'll try to understand that as well. Now, revenue collection target, what the Kenya Revenue Authority expects to collect is at 3.3 trillion shillings, and this may perhaps explain the talks of let's expand the tax bracket or the tax base, and what they expect to collect is 3.3 trillion shillings. Problem is, year in, year out, KRA have missed that target. So where is the problem? So that's a number that you need to jolt down. Let's also take a look at what the executive, judiciary and parliament is expected to get as the budget. The executive is expected to get about 2.24 trillion shillings. The executive is expected to get about 2.24 trillion shillings. This includes recurrent expenditure and the development expenditure. Recurrent expenditure is basically money that goes into ministry, servicing various state departments. That is at 1.5 trillion shillings, part of the executive. And also the development expenditure. You expect roads, you expect schools to be built, you expect hospitals to be built. Well, that particular budget is at 707.4 billion shillings. Now, the judiciary, which has also year in, year out, been allocated the least amount of money compared to the other two arms of government, will get 23 billion shillings. The parliament will get 43 billion shillings. Now, counties, this is where also a big hurdle is out concerning the county revenue allocation formula. You're having the talks of 1 man, 1 vote, 1 shilling. So this is the money that is supposed to factor in such debates. Well, it is still, a talk, no approval yet, but the county revenue allocation formula will be used to distribute 400 billion shillings to all the 47 counties, and for that matter, equally. Now, let's go to some of the tax laws that we do have in the Republic of Kenya, or at least how do they decide what they are taxing. The 5 main tax laws in the Republic of Kenya include the Income Tax Act, the VAT Act, what we call Value Added Tax Act. One is missing from that list, and that is on the Excise Duty Act, as well as the Miscellaneous Fees and Levies Act and the Tax Procedures Act. So some of these things we're going to have conversations around on what has been taxed. Well, these are the 5 main tax laws across the Republic of Kenya. So one is missing from this list, and that is the Excise Duty Act. Now, let's speak about exactly what is being taxed. The controversial car tax that is at 2.5% of the car value, with a bracket minimum of 5,000 shillings and a maximum of 100,000 shillings. Now, that has been quite controversial on the car tax, on the question on whether or not it is just similar to what the pay-as-you-earn income is. People pay insurance for those particular cars, people fuel those particular cars. So why do we need a car tax? The CS says we're increasing our tax base, or at least the tax bracket. And so we'll also be having a conversation around that. Betting, gaming, and lottery stakes, 15 to 20% rise in terms of VAT. This has also been a reflection of just over the years what has really been the target. Betting, gaming, lottery has been the target of tax increase. Now also have credit and debit cards, forex transactions, processing of checks, a 16% rise in VAT. What is missing from this list is a 10 shillings rise on the cost of bread. There's a VAT that has been imposed on bread. Talk about M-Pesa and money transfer charges, which will see a 10 to 20% rise, as well as alcohol, the type of beer and whiskey and vodka, which will also be impacted by the VAT. Now, the excise duty, we're looking at edible oils, which will see a 25% excise duty imposed on edible oils, and this is likely to hit home because no household goes without using cooking oil. So edible oils, 25% of excise duty. Plastic package, 10%. The eco levy has been one also of the controversial taxes, because you're paying a tax to conserve the environment, which basically targets a couple of manufacturers. And so how far is the government willing to go to ensure that they get the right amount of money that they need, or revenue collected? Also, introduction of tax on advertising on internet and social media. So for you to pay for an advert on Facebook, on Instagram, or any other social media platform, you're likely to see a different charge to that particular advertising. And then finally, what else has been taxed? This includes import declaration fees, which has been increased to 3%, withholding tax introduced on supply of goods and public entities, as well as the allowable pension deduction, raised to 30,000 shillings per month from 20,000 shillings per month, and a digital service tax that has been transformed to a withholding tax and will apply to both residents and non-residents. Now, this has made Uber, the famous Uber, as well as Bolt, who have said the taxes are a bit too high, and if this trajectory continues, or at least if this bill passes as it is, then they're likely to move their businesses from Kenya. So those are some of the numbers that we have for you tonight that are within the budget 2025, and this will be the basis of our discussion tonight, as we try to understand just what are we missing as a country, because we seem to have a plan of development and how we can improve the cost of living in the country, but at what cost? Because at the end of the day, it is the common citizen who has really spoken out and said they do not want that. So let me introduce my guest in studio, who will be having this conversation with in just a few minutes. On my immediate right, I'm joined by Bernard Ochieng, who's a business development professional as well as a financial consultant. Thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you.
As well as John Mungai, who's the National Secretary from the Economist Society of Kenya. Thank you very much, John, as well.
Asante.
Now, before we take a quick break, perhaps just get your view. You know, a 4 trillion shillings budget, you know, that's a lot. And if you look at the debt status as well, 11.3 trillion shillings. I mean, we seem to be playing a losing game here, John, aren't we?
Thank you. First, quickly, I would like to introduce myself. My name is John Mungai, the National Secretary for the Economic Society of Kenya.
Yeah.
We are the national body for all economists in the country,
yes,
both from private and public sector. Coming back to your question, I think it is good to be ambitious as a country. We aspire to develop, achieve Vision 2030. But then, how do we want to develop? That should be the big question. Do we develop by overtaxing ourselves? Do we develop by minimizing wastage? Do we develop and go forward by looking at the critical sectors? That should be the question.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, when we come back, we'll have an in-depth conversation around that. But Bernard, quickly to also get your thought. This tax base, you know, seems to, we really, the CS can't really seem to get it right, as well as the Kenya Revenue Authority, because what they are going for is persons that also, you know, already are being taxed. Their source of income is being taxed. They are paying taxes in other various ways, but they say a new tax bracket, which still affects this one person. What is a tax bracket first?
Thank you, Cynthia, for this opportunity. Just to introduce myself, I'm Bernard Ochieng.
Yes.
Business development consultant. I work with clients who want to start businesses, be it from the legitimization, you give them the advice, you do business plans, strategic plans, and then you do the implementation. So even in our conversation today, before I answer your question, I'll be talking about the practical things that are on the ground, because we might be talking about a report that has been given, but there's just I like the report you had given earlier, what the people are saying on the ground.
Yes.
Now, going back to your question about the tax bracket, basically the tax bracket are people who have registered and are having a PIN, like you are required to have a PIN because you cannot pay taxes without a registered PIN number against your name, whether you are in business like self-employment under the company,
or carry PIN for that
that matter. So if you look at what is happening with the budget that has been given, like on the tax base, we are very ambitious, just like John has said, which is not bad, but I think we need to go back and reflect. How do we go there? Because already the tax bracket, there's a number, so we are trying to get more from the people, from the already registered, but the bigger budget needs to come from a bigger base.
All right, so that conversation returns in a bit more of that, as well as some of these numbers that you've seen on this wall. How do they affect you? Because at the end of the day, there could be big numbers, but if your business is being affected, the cost of living is being affected, then there is a problem somewhere. So that conversation returns after the break. Your SMS feedback is highly welcomed across our social media platforms. We are live, as well as our feedback line 23059. Stay with us. Shortly, we'll be back.
Watching EBN TV, transforming your world.
Are you looking to host an unforgettable event that will leave a lasting impression on your guests? Well, look no further than Iconic Events, the premier event planning company in the region. We are an audiovisual equipment hiring company that has handled some of the biggest events in the country. We provide a reliable, comprehensive range of event solutions such as corporate events, crusade, weddings, worship experience, Rurashios, etc. Our expertise centers on the provision of high-performance PA systems, quality backlight, stage lighting, high-resolution LEDs and projection screens, DJ equipment, live recording services, and sound installation. We offer a range of options to suit different needs and budgets. Talk to us and let us turn your dream event into a reality. Contact us today at 0711-238-353 or 0706-501-701 or 0731-706-003. You can also visit us at Buruburu Phase 4, Rare Court. Iconic Events, we got you covered. EBN TV cares about the growth of your business. To advertise with us, call 0725 386 501 or 0740 653 453. EBN TV, transforming your world.
You are watching EBN TV, transforming your world.
Well, thank you for staying with us. This is our special coverage of the budget 2024-2025. We just, before the break, had touched a little bit about what are some of the key things that need to stand out. And, you know, Mungai here talked about having an ambitious budget. So let me once again introduce my guest. I'm joined by Bernard Ochieng, who is a business development professional as well as a financial consultant. And just next to him is John Mungai, who's the National Secretary from the Economist Society of Kenya. So gentlemen, let's just get this conversation started. A 4 trillion shillings budget, and if you look at the previous financial years and just the numbers that have been put out, the number keeps on rising, which basically means in the next 5 years as well, we could be talking about a budget that is at perhaps 6 trillion or 7 trillion shillings, but it's not really reflecting in people's pockets. It's not really reflecting on the cost of business, on the cost of living. Bernard, that figure, you supported that we're ambitious. Perhaps you could expound more on that.
Okay. Thank you, Cynthia. Yes, I believe we are very ambitious. When the current government came into the office, I think when you check at their manifesto, of course, their riding factor is backed on the bottom-up economy.
Yes.
Which right now, if you listen what people are talking about on the ground, it is no longer what people expected like when they are campaigning. So if you look at a 4 trillion budget and then again you compare with the debt deficit of around 11 trillion.
Yes.
So you compare the two, and most of the debt we are talking about here is foreign debt. So it means any influx on the foreign exchange affects our debts and all that. And I remember a few months ago, there's a day the president stood up and said, we are on the trajectory, we are coming back. We are no longer bad the way when they came into the office and all of that. So based on what I know is on the ground, because I interact with a number of business people, the people on the ground are not feeling the effect of the taxes they are paying. As a friend who was telling me that we have no problem even if you tax us 50% of our income. So long as the tax that we are really paying to the government is being used, like for example the infrastructure. Like the public goods, like for example the roads and all that. And you can remember we are just from a very vicious flood, the weather, the season, the roads were damaged and all that. And I think one thing that is happening, Kenyans would like to see the balance between the revenue collection and the development per se. And then as you look at the budget again, why am I saying we are so ambitious is because I look at the first, like the executive, the arm of the government that have been given some money. And majority of Kenyans are feeling like the administration is using too much money on themselves, like the salaries and the personal facilities and equipment rather than developing the country or developing things that the common mwananchi would feel that they're really developing to that. So that is why I believe they're ambitious. They should have really reflected back and then another thing that is coming very closely, when the CS for Finance, Treasury, started the conversation today in the Parliament, there are two words I was really keen about that he talked about, and he said, we have listened to Kenyans. And I was just sharing with John that does it mean that there's something called public participation? Of course, the bill is still in the Parliament and the people will be able to vote, but there was that season where people were required to do participation. I've seen the church come up and say there are some things in this bill we are not okay with. I've seen the private sector that deals with manufacturing coming and all that, and I like what you mentioned, like the Uber. There are people, until the other day, Coca-Cola came in and said, if this is what is going on, like on the plastic, we better take our manufacturing to other countries. So basically what is lacking, the government is ambitious, but they are not listening to the citizens who are supposed to be part of that. So is it just that we are told it is a participation, but we are not, they are not acting
for formality, you mean?
Formality, yeah. So that's.
Now, John, one of the things that the CS really spoke about was that they would love to expand the tax systems and tax proposals that support markets and consumptions. But if you listen to the feel of the ground, analysts, experts, the Kenyans really don't feel like those particular policies and tax systems that have been put up in place support the markets and things that they're consuming, services that they're using. Because look at the tax, we are talking about a car tax of 2.5%. You're talking about excise duty on edible oils. You're talking about tax on money and just the transfer of charges on mobile money. So are they missing the point here? Because as you said, they should be listening to Kenyans, but they're not, because we saw that in the Finance Bill 2023, the housing levy, it still went through. So chances are, if they don't listen, all these policies will go through.
Thank you. I think there is an element of lack of creativity in terms of tax proposals. One, when you talked about facilitating the markets systems and the whole economic system to function, then where would be the priority target? We are an agro-based or an agri-based economy, and I would have expected more of a targeted approach or targeted focus on agri-sector. But look, car tax, for example, how will it impact the agri-sector? Yeah, it means, as you say, if, for example, I'm importing a pickup to go and transport my agri-produce for other people, I'll have to increase the price. Meaning the end buyer will have to increase, the buying price. Number two, when you look at the most taxed are the formally employed, yet the informal consists of around 83% of the economy. Do we have a policy or strategies to target this sector instead of over-focusing on already overtaxed segment of the society? Yeah. So I think those are the key questions. And if we are to expand the tax base, you have to apply one principle of taxation that's called the benefit principle. I pay more tax if I'm getting more benefit from that tax. So, for example, when you drive a car, you pay tax on fuel. Because you're enjoying the road, there is a road levy. So that is called the tax benefit. But when I'm paying, when I'm paying more tax and I can't see more benefits, people tend to run away from, formal system and become informal. And therefore black market and other tax evasion things happen. So mine would be, we look at our tax policy and tax strategy, and we look away from these salaried people where we are taxing and taxing and taxing. A good example, last year there was increase in the tax on beer and the keg beer. So what have we seen this year? They are reducing the tax proposals. Why? People ran away from the formal brewed beer to Changa and other cheap locally made beer. What happens? The beer segment is one of the biggest paying in terms of tax. So you end up losing when you don't employ well-designed tax system. So I think those are the challenges that we have, and maybe we have economists in our society who can volunteer to come and and design these tax policies. Yeah, but I know the CS is a close economist like us. Yeah, and we are here to provide our expertise and give good proposals. But something must be done on the tax proposals. Otherwise, we are going to cripple the business environment, and the government, the KRA, will be the loser. In the last budget proposal, the target was to collect 2.6 trillion, if I'm right. Did we meet the target? No, in capital letters. This year we are proposing to collect 2.9 something. Will we meet? If we didn't meet 2.62, what informs
2.9?
That's the question. And we cannot meet that 2.92 by taxing diapers and unga and no, we must become more creative.
Right.
Yeah.
He talks of creativity, but at this point in time, the government seems not to get it because they missed that particular target in the last financial year. Now, they've introduced various taxes, and they expect that from the eco levy they'll get 10 billion. They expect that from the VAT they'll get 90 billion. They expect from the excise duty they'll get 500 million shillings. And so there's so much press around this pay slip. And if you'd listen to the Cabinet Secretary for Public Service, Moses Kuria, who says this budget is to afflict the comfortable and comfort the afflicted. Being poor is a problem, and now being rich is a problem as well. Bernard?
Okay. I think before I answer your question, I think we need to get the narrative of where we are coming from, even as a country. We are just from multiple calamities. Like if you look at the business community, we just had COVID, not too much than 2 years ago. Then we are from a long time drought. Then recently we have got the floods. So people are really gripping to come back to life. I think there's something I've been seeing even happening in the CBD. Like if you walk in the central business district and there are these businesses of exhibition, if you are very keen, you will realize there are new faces of those businesses coming up, which means people are not able even to pay the rents and not able to do the obligations and all of that. And I think one thing that is becoming very clear, even with the tax, that the budget that has really been going, and I concur with what John has said, it is not informed based on, because a country is supposed to look at what is happening to their citizens and then from there build it, like when they missed the revenue collection. And I want to give you a very simple example. There's something right now happening, and one of the things that has happened in this country, before something major is done, we don't do sensitization. So the common, I was just telling John when we were still in the boardroom that at least this year, the people have been talking about the finance bill. Initially, we just used to say we are going to hear budget being read, but they were not going into details. But since the high cost of living has come in and people are feeling it in their pockets, they are now going deeper and asking themselves, these people we voted, did we make the right decision and how this thing is affecting us? So I wanted to say about look something like VAT. When you are registering a company, you are told that if the turnover of your company is at the threshold of a minimum of 5 million, automatically you qualify for the VAT. Today I've heard the CS saying that there's a proposal to take the 5 million threshold to 8 million. But what is informing that change? What makes somebody qualify? Like even how do you know that somebody has qualified for the 5 million and all that? There's something that KRA has been trying to do and some changes that has come along there. Like there's the E-team, things that the business community has really been fighting. Of course, the electronic tax invoicing system was to bring the compliance and also to make accountability. Because majority of people have been declaring nil, so government wanted a system that they can now use to track people to be able to do that. But still, E-teams. But the way it has been done, there's lack of sensitization. So we just hear there's a proposal, but the common public is really grappling with the information. So it's something that you just find of the public, but if you ask the ordinary person, like I deal with people in business, for the last 2 months, one of the things I've really faced a lot, people are deregistering companies. Like I can give a case study of a client that I'm serving from US. They are working there, but they had started some businesses here. But the people they are put on the ground to be able to help them in managing those businesses, are really not working the way they're supposed to do. So she's forced to pay like penalties without getting profit. So the solution is, why don't I just close the businesses? Because if I'm not benefiting, why put it on the ground? So I think we need to be able to make decisions based on the informed information on the ground, rather than just proposing something and it is not happening.
Right.
And Smith, maybe just to build on his point, and to answer one of your questions, when you say that the budget is about afflicting the
comfortable and comforting the afflicted.
No, I think universally they are accepted principles of taxation, and one is fairness, the other one is ability to pay. Fairness means you pay according to your capability, not because you should be afflicted in any way. That's number one. Number two is the ability to pay. There is the point that you can stretch somebody in terms of the payment. I mean, if I tax your pay slip, you work here, to a certain point, you still need no incentive of working. I mean, you cannot tax somebody per certain level. So we must have tax proposals that are, one, fair, two, equitable. I might be the CEO here, earning $1 million. If I'm also trading and earning $1 million, we should be paying the same thing. But don't tell me because I'm employed and I'm earning 200,000, other one is trading and earning $1 million, then I have to be afflicted. For what purpose? I mean, we must look at those general accepted international principles about taxation and how they then impact the economy.
Right. I'd love us to speak about the digital service tax. Now that we have Bernard here, who's a business development professional as well as a financial consultant. Now there's a plan to improve the digital, or to introduce a digital service tax, which has been transformed to a withholding tax that will apply to both residents and non-residents. And two companies specific, the taxi companies, Uber and Bolt, said, this should not really happen because in addition to that, there are so many other taxes as well that they, occur or income. And this proves a threat because if you're looking at businesses which are very much ready to withdraw their businesses from Kenya because of the tax environment and just what is the space and whether or not, that will also force them to perhaps increase the charges, which, has a ripple effect as well as to people that use these particular services. So in this point in time, and if this particular bill passes as it is, are we looking at a scenario where we're having multiple businesses that will draw their services from Kenya, and how much damage does that do to our economy, an economy to which they say this budget is supposed to stimulate at the end of the day?
Thank you, Cynthia. I think the digital thing should not be taken lightly because the world has moved to a global village, and I am a testimony that most of the things I do online. I talk to clients online, you close a deal online and all of that. And I think they are proposing, actually they want now to call the tax SEP, which is a significant economic presence. And they are targeting the multinationals who are having big online presence. Like, for example, look at Google. Google is like controlling a number of advertisements, even the YouTube, which we are like now live streaming is from that platform. So if you look, initially the digital tax was supposed to be 1.5%, but the current proposed SEP is coming to 6%. So I think if you look at it in that perspective, and then it is targeting the multinationals who are in another angle are investors in our country. And if you can, I think 2 weeks ago, there was something that happened with Bolt, where they stopped around 6,000 drivers. And that week, if you tried to order a cab, you would just hear a question being asked, how much are you paying? Do you want me just to come and be offline and all of that? So I think one thing that the government is should be cognizant is about that, and even I think the current government, our president, Mr. William Ruto, I think when he was giving his speech, he has always echoed the digital platform, like the digital economy. Even there is this logic when he went to Baringo, Rift Valley, the young man who was saying that was working online and earning over 46,000 in a week. And I think even 2 weeks ago, there was this thing about the film industry, where they had written like to the people who have been doing online shows like or Gaubina, the people have been online, that they want them to produce licenses that is authorizing them to do that. Like they want to control the digital space. So I think the government needs to look into it very well. And another thing is that it is affecting the investment, because like the big multinationals, one thing I know about the big multinationals, they are so much careful about the environment where they operate in. And if they find something that is not going to give them like the profitability and also bring the impact, like even on manufacturing, they are opting to go out to a country that is of a cool environment to do whatever they want to do, convenience, and still be able to do that. So in a layman's language, it is going to affect, and even the citizens, because right now most people are doing content creation, and people are feeling like, so I'm going to be taxed by just posting like my ideas and such kind of stuff. So it needs to be considered in a way so that we don't affect the overall investment, both for the local and in the international market.
Mungai, you know, the government has an ICT ministry, a ministry that is really trying to ramp up the digital economy. We've got Ajira digital hubs that are being launched, but at the same time, you're having a 6%, you know, significant economic presence tax that is being put up as well on the digital space. So, what's the rationale around that? Because you're trying to ramp up a particular economy, but at the same time, you're imposing taxes. Isn't the natural reflex movies just move away from the digital space at all?
Actually, you are on point. One, as I said earlier, the informal, where even these Uber drivers and the content creators, they are in the informal segment classification of the economy, employs 83% of the workforce. This country, 83%.
That's a huge number.
Huge number. Imagine the number of Ubers. If you had like 10 Ubers, or Uber and Bolt and the others, how many drivers are they employing? You know, you're informally employed in that sector. So one thing, and I want to insist on adherence to some principles of taxation. If there is no certainty about our taxation system, investors will flow away. You know, they will shift their capital from here. Why? Because Uber and Bolt, they go and fundraise from investors. And based on that year taxation, they say, we project to earn this much and give you return of this much. But if tomorrow, I'm not sure that you will wake up and impose another tax, it means my investors will have lesser return. So we must be very careful about these proposals. I am for taxation. It should be there. But that's significant. From this year you are at 1.5, next year you are at 6. So we don't know whether the other year will be at 20. So that's the issue. The other thing, look, for example, at, you mentioned about Coca-Cola. You hit Coca-Cola with the eco-tax. How many vehicles do they own?
Several.
So are you saying that even with those vehicles they should be paying annually, yet upon importation or production you pay for the tax? Every other hour, every other day you pay for tax in terms of fuel. So I think some proposal needs to be relooked. Yes, we need the money. We need to pay our debt. We need to pay our development project, our civil servants and other programs. But we must be creative when looking at how do we raise this money without killing the economy. You know, otherwise we're going to propose to get the money, but it's like a cow. There is a limit that the cow can produce the milk.
You can't milk it all day.
Exactly.
You can't milk it all day. All right, now let's talk about the debt situation in the country. A debt status of 11.4 trillion shillings, a budget deficit of 606 billion. We still owe Eurobond, we still owe the International Monetary Fund, we still owe China, we still owe the World Bank. We do a lot of borrowing externally at 55%, contrary to the borrowing that we do locally at 44%. Now, if you look at this debt status, we are stuck in a cycle as a country. There's a budget deficit, borrow loans, fill the gap. You know, the repayment plans or the repayment period sometimes go in excess of years, which are detrimental to the country's economy. So, Mungai, is there ever a way we can ever reduce the budget deficit in the country?
I think there is a way. There is a way. Number one is we can look at how do we do our budgeting. I think our budgeting is called, we do program-based budgeting, where a program for last financial year is used to build on the program for this financial year. So whether that program should be there or not, we build on that. There are other elements of budgeting that are called zero-based budgeting. You start from zero and say, do we really need this program or do we need to scrap it? That's number one. Number two, we look at how we expend our money. The expenditure side is where the problem is, including the monies we are giving to counties. How many counties are building beautiful and big state houses for counties? Yeah? And that is money the government must borrow and give them. Yeah? How many projects do we know that do not make any sense? Last year, I think it was the Auditor General, said before the committee that was formed to look, I think it was called what? The committee that was formed between the government and opposition. After the demos in the streets. She said that her budget was inflated 2 times. Her annual budget. Herself. She is supposed to be paid annually 9-point-something billion. But on the budget it was 18-point-something, double. And it was the money drawn from the consolidated fund. There were, I think, 6 elements she mentioned. So the question is, how much are we losing in this budgeted corruption? Can we be able to minimize such kind of wastage? Because I know we can save amount equivalent to almost half of what we are paying every year. Yeah? Do away with these state houses. I mean, for heaven's sake, why are you building state houses every other 47 counties? Yeah? I think if we look at the expenditure side and the wastage, yes, we can be able to remove this deficit and this cycle of borrowing and borrowing every year.
Yeah. He's got a point, because that has been reflected in the budget this year as well, because in the war against corruption, the CS said 4.2 billion shillings to the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, 4 billion to the Office of the DPP, 6 billion shillings to the state departments. You've got 7.9 billion shillings to the Officer of the Auditor General. Now, the Auditor General seems to be doing her work, in all honesty, because of the reports that she tables, the gaps that she says are missing, the money that is being spent in foreign travels, money that cannot be accounted for. So, in all honesty, she's doing her work. So there's money to state corporations that are fighting the war against corruption. But is the corruption really... the corruption seems to be fighting back.
Yeah.
For lack of a better word. Yeah.
Actually, on that point, Cynthia, is that the revenue is not the problem, because there are figures that on a randomly based, whether you look on the national government or the county government, I think it is a matter of priority. I usually joke, like, if you drive to town every day, by 9 a.m., the parkings are full. And just calculate the 200 or the 250 bob, and some park within 1 hour and they go. So the revenue collection is not the problem. I think it is about the misappropriation of the funds. And I think another thing is priority. Like, if you looked at the allocations, and one thing that was interesting to me about the allocations was the money given to the Defense Ministry and the money given to the Office of the Deputy First Lady. If you compare, actually, the Deputy Office, the First Lady...
Office of the Spouse to the Deputy President
is having more than the defense. Now you ask yourself, defense is something to do with security and all that. We have just coming from the US tour, where our president was able to go there, and there was this question about the jet, the 200 million jet and all that. Then in the process of explaining, they came in and said there were some friends who came along. Now the question I was asking myself, if the friends could come in and do the 200 million jet, we have got cases where the school feeding programs are being attacked to be pulled out.
Actually, negative 2.4 billion.
Negative 200. Why don't these friends come in and be able to bail us out as a form of financing to the government? So when you talk about this debt issue and all, I think we need to look at the priority on corruption. There's something I'm proposing. I want to give you a very simple example. Like right now, we are in a season of filing taxes. The deadline has been drawn is 30th of June this month. Now Kenyans, we have got this thing of last minute. It's something I experience in my own business. People wait until the last minute before they do that. And even the passport thing, I was saying, instead of people going and giving handouts, like for something to be, a document to be processed faster, why don't we have a system whereby it says if you want something processed faster, like now the passport you are traveling, you pay more for that service. So that it doesn't become corruption, but it becomes a source of income to the government. then I think it's just a matter of priority. Then you see, look at the money being spent in refurbishing, like the state houses and such kind of stuff. Yeah. The recently doctors strike and the teachers strike. I've always been amazed. When anytime doctors cry for money, there's always no money. But these other projects like the administration and such kind of stuff, there's usually money for them to be done. So I think we need to look at our value system, the priority, like the people we need to give attention to and be able to just appropriate the budget. Right. So the money is there, it's not that it is not there, but it is going to some places it's not supposed to go to.
And Senator, just to build on his point, mine would be, we look at what are the priority economic sectors of this economy. And I'll go back to agri, because agri drives our economy. Remove agri even for you, everything goes crazy. Agri, it has been shown that creating one job in agri, it has a multiplier effect of 2 other jobs. So do we take more resources to agri? Do we give more incentives to agri? Do we make agri more productive? Because even if you look at our industries, the bigger percentage feeds, the raw materials from agri. So agri feeds the industry, agri feeds us. So if you look at that, then what are we supposed to be doing on agri? Yeah. Do farmers have affordable access to finance? Because banks are there to make money. So banks will not look at you if you're not doing the right thing. They are not here to help. So what is the government supposed to be looking at to make sure that the key driver is stimulated, people are making money, people are getting employment? That's number one. Number two, I think it's the issue of sometimes we need to reduce the incentive for people asking for bribes. I mean, if you look at when we digitized even ID application, there are things that went down, because there is minimal human interaction. I'm for the government, and I clap for them for digitizing many things, even revenue collection. It takes away the incentive of that officer asking for something. Then for these other bigger projects, how can we then remove the aspect of incentive? Because if I'm handling a project of 1 billion, is there a way that the human element of that incentive can be removed from me so that it is known? It is almost auto in a system, and Cynthia gets the contract without having talking to John and Kunakitu. If we can be able to hit that, then I think we might not solve 100%, the problem, but we solve it to a bigger extent.
All right, as we almost wind up this conversation, gentlemen, I wouldn't go without speaking about the wage bill, because 38.2% of the total revenue goes into paying, salaries and allowances and miscellaneous that sometimes are not specified what they are for. And the CS talked about increasing efficiency in public service. And this wage bill issue does not just affect the national government, affects the county government, because we've got too many workers within the public service, and that is perhaps what has led to the CS saying, for 1 year, no recruitment into the public service. Does that reduce the wage bill? Bernard?
Okay, so when we talk about the wage bill here, I think we need to be very, very practical. And I think when you start from the executive coming down, I think there was this proposal about the CASs that was, according to the constitution, it was not supposed to be there. But the government of the day is like pushing for it and all of that. And I remember when there's the day when the president was saying that this thing needs to start with themselves, like cutting down on what they are being paid to be able to support the economic activities, rather than them being paid. It is very, very interesting, like the government workers have been paid, but the people who have supplied the government with goods and services, like for over 6 months, have not been paid. And even today, if you could read on today's budget, there's still a cry on balancing that. So I think, and even on the recruitment, we've had cases of ghost workers, people who are being told are on the pay slip, but they are not actually there. And even the fake certificates and such. So I think the system that is capturing the civil servants, how they are recruited into the system and all that, of course still the issue of the corruption and where people are being employed based on who you know. Like if there is a vacancy, People think of the immediate people who can benefit from their network and such kind of stuff. So I think the system of the employment by itself needs to be scrutinized, and then also we just need to deal with the priority. Yeah. If something is not needed, let it be dealt away with. And then another thing that I can add on this point is that there's something we are forgetting. If you study the economies of the countries that have developed, and I'll give a very good example, US and UK, it has taken time for them to be where they are. Like over 150 years, we are talking about 150 years, their systems have been built progressively. What is happening with our current administration is that even the tax proposals, some of them are really very good, but the time, they are not being given time to be able to be done in a progressive way. Like we can't do 6 amendments and make them, like I was looking at that document, it's around 136 pages, the finance bill. And some of the proposed dates, like some are starting in July. If the parliament approves, like the voting and all that, there's some that are supposed to start in July and some are like in October. So we really need to be practical in the way we handle like the human resource part of it, because of course people have to work to be able to deliver the services. Right. That's what I can say for
you know, Mungai, there's a human resource management system that the government has really been wrapping up support on. Isn't that a practical way of reducing the wage bill?
I think there are two elements of looking at that wage bill issue, because it means you reduce the number or you use the same number to do more work. Yeah. So if you're reducing the number, I don't think that is applicable. You know, we have quotas and unions that will not allow you to sack people en masse. So that is not possible. Number two, another element that we are ignoring is that when you hike things, when you hike the tax, the VAT, there's inflation, people will demand increments every year. So we are going to witness a growth in the payroll. That said, if we want efficiency, are we giving this human resource the tools, the capabilities to do the work, you know, to do more work with less people? Then it means then you have to have another line of expenditure that supports that, you know, that efficiency. So it is a quagmire. So I think one, as long as we have people in place, the wage bill is going to continue growing. And as he said, sometimes we have political interests, not necessarily the economic and business sense. So you have to reward people who, you know, who you are within the team. It is allowed. But remember, when you award them, then the lower cadre is also saying. So they will go to their cocoons and their unions and say, I mean, inflation is there. We need more money. Otherwise, to tender slow on a go slow. Yeah. So the human resource element is okay. The system of recruitment is okay. But giving them the facilities and the equipment and technology to work efficiently is more critical. And beyond that, even training them to use the technology. Yeah. So I'm for element of digitizing out of work, efficiency. But we have to find a way of making the human resource more productive. Why is it that the same number of people that you would take would be in certain ministry, maybe even not producing any revenue, is equal to what Safaricom is using in terms of workforce, bringing in billions of shillings every year? It's because of efficiency and also the incentives and so on and so forth. I mean, if I'm paying you X amount to host the morning show and this show, then you have I must pay you enough to work for both. But if I'm paying you peanuts, you won't have us here. You'll be looking at your watch and like, oh, I want to be over. I need to but be home. So there are all those elements that we must look at, and they have cost implications.
So as we wrap up this conversation, there's a question that has come in that I'd love perhaps both of you to address. There's a gentleman, Sam Mwangi, who says the 2.5% of the value of the car vehicle that must be the car tax amounts to double taxation since the importer already paid other taxes during importation. And he says in Swahili, ulipe import duty, ulipe excise duty, ulipe custom duty, uki-import na bado, hata kama how import, you will still incur these charges directly. Isn't that double taxation, Mungai?
Actually, it is triple. Yeah, because do you know if you import a car, you pay, let's say you import a car, you pay 2 million. More than $1 million goes to taxes and charges. Yeah? Yeah, that's number one. That car you're buying is not an asset that produces money or gives you income. You buy a car to take you to work because, one, we don't have a well-structured public transport system. Otherwise, if you are in Europe where you wake up and you find that you are train to town or a good system, yeah, you go. Number two, every time you travel from here to town or wherever you are going, you are paying tax for the road, VAT on the fuel, which has also been doubled. You are paying some other levy, yeah, and so on and so forth, including road maintenance, and sometimes the roads are not maintained. Yeah. Then when you tell me you charge me again for the car annually, what is the sense? I mean, this car I paid during the importation, I'm paying every other day. Why am I paying? I also remember also insurance. There is a levy on insurance which you pay every year. I mean, you cannot. What people will do, will pack the cars. Yeah, so there'll be low demand on fuel. Means you lose more revenue as government on fuel. People will start being creative. We pull together and we use one car, 4 of us. So some taxes will end up hurting government and KRA more than it will hurt the Mwananchi. And this is one of the tax, it will hit every economy, every sector of the economy, be it agriculture, be it manufacturing, be it, you know.
Because they use vehicles to transport.
Exactly. And what are we saying? That is the core nut of our economy. If we hit that, we break it, we are breaking this economy. That must be done away with. Yeah.
Bernard, one question for you as well. Somebody says on the M-Pesa and money transfer charges, the 10 to 20% rise that is expected if the bill passes, surely even the government would listen to some of the stakeholders like Safaricom who've warned against that rise.
So basically, I think it is passing the cost to the consumer. And I'll just give a very good example. Like if you are to withdraw money from the ATM, for example, you'll spend like 30 bob to withdraw that money. With now the proposed amendments, it means it's going to 15 to 16%, which means there will be another 6 shillings, which now goes to the government. So out of the 30, the government, the excise duty being charged. So it means the bank will not deduct their money. They will add the 6 shillings, now you will be deducted 36 shillings and all that. And I think this is also killing the financial, like in terms of the digital economy, because where we have moved with technology, remember when there was no M-Pesa, you could not even send money to people at home. But now with the mobile transactions, like I love it, technology has really made life very convenient. In terms of payment, somebody can send you money right where you are seated here and money comes from US. And somebody was joking like to send money even from the outside to the country. Like somebody was giving an example of 5,000 bob. The cost could go to like around 150 shillings if you go by the proposed changes. So in another way, the citizens are feeling like the little already they have is being milked away and they are already dry. So it will really affect. And another thing that remember when there is a time the KRA had started, there was a notion they are working on the ground, they have sent people on the ground and they are checking. And if you could look even the till, people had started running away from the payment from the till and were now opting for the cash. So it will affect the flow of the cash flow and also affecting businesses in a way.
Right.
And Cynthia, on that point, I think Safaricom during the last financial statement, they said the revenue from P2P, person to person, dipped on introduction of that, the last introduction of that duty on transfer service. Number two, the uptake of pay bill dipped that year. So what are we saying? You know, you propose to milk more money, but you end up making the cow not produce.
And missing the target.
Missing the target. Because you want to milk and go and drink the milk, but not sell and feed the cow. You must find a way of balancing. So is it better to earn more revenue by retaining 15% or even 10%, so that people can transact more? Or is it advisable or sensible to charge more? People will go back to the mattress, pay such in your mattress, and you end up collecting lesser. Exactly.
So, right, gentlemen, that is why I want to wrap it up. But final word as we close, is it all gloom as it close? Because it sounds like, you know, Everything's bad news. So final word in a second, Bernard.
Okay, I think Kenyans need to gear up for more tough times, and I think one thing I can say, we need to gear up our spirits. It might not change, or things might not change to be rosy very soon. With this government, with the patterns I've seen, people really need to buckle up their seatbelt. And I think I'll just end by a quote that says that, give me a place to stand and I will move the world. So everybody, whether you are in employment or you are in business, you have to think of the dimensional ways on how you can support yourself. Right. Thank you.
Mungai, final word.
I think as much as we hammer the proponents of the bill, we must also give credit. One, there's a proposal on the money that you pay to NHIF, now they are calling it SHIF, and housing levy will be deductible when calculating your tax. I think that is good. From an economist perspective, they are expanding the disposable income. They also the allowable, I think when you contribute to a pension scheme, they are proposing lesser deduction in terms of the money that you pay tax. I think that is good to encourage people to save for future, especially during the retirement period. The other element of allowing an employer provide employees with food, and that money is deductible. Deductible means when calculating the tax you're supposed to pay, it is first removed. Then that encourages employers to provide employees during this tough time with food. So those are some of the few elements that I think they are good in this bill. Yeah, but I think it is not all gloom. We have parliament. I mean, it is not law yet. So it is with our representatives, and I think they have had. I was reading something on social media that today Kenyans decided to draw numbers of the MPs on social media.
From the president to the MP.
Exactly. And people got called or got text, and then they would send back the replies. And you could feel even Kenyans are tired. So I think it's not all gloom, but we request our lawmakers to be considerate. We might want to propose something to have the economy, but within 1 year we'll have killed more than we are benefiting.
Right. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Bernard Ocheng on my immediate right, who's a business development professional as well as a financial consultant. And just next to him is John Mungai, who's the National Secretary for the Economist Society of Kenya. Thank you for coming in to shed more light on this budget conversation. It does not end here. It is not cast on. It is not a law yet. It's still a bill set to be tabled in Parliament next week on Tuesday, and that is when we'll know where we stand as a country, whether it will pass as it is or there are some of the amendments that will be made. Thank you very much for watching. There are so many of you. Thank you very much, Leonard Simiyu. I can see Nikoye Janet, Branis Machiosi, Seth Bradley, Angela Kitondo, as well as Derek Wangila, Kristen Wangila, Sky Loki, Feliwex. Thank you very much for all that have tuned in this evening. Sorry, I'm used to the morning show. This evening, as well as Alex Nimsi and Violet Isanda as well. Thank you very much for keeping us company. We hope that we've really been able to give you, insights into this budget 2024-2025. The conversation does not end here. Tuesday is still a long way to go, so we'll keep on having it so that you can get to know more, as well as accountability as well. When members of parliament pass this bill and there are some of the aspects that you're not really happy about, you can hold them to account. That's why I wrap it up tonight. Have a wonderful night. My name is Cynthia Nanjala.